Welcome to our CS Talks. Today we're talking all about key moments that matter in your customer lifecycle and all about advocacy as well. So a bit of a combo, and we have such an incredible group here today. Everyone is connected in a way through advocacy. A lot of us work together. And to kick things off, we're going to talk about what is one thing that you are proud of that you've done for a customer, something cool, something unique. So let's start with Dina from Captivate Collective, and we'll go around and then we'll start our discussion.
Sure. Hey everyone. Great opening topic, Julie, and hello to everyone out there and everyone on the call. I think the most meaningful things that you can do for your customers and for your advocates is to connect to what's important to them in their real life, not just their professional life, but their real life as well. And I had a customer who really had a platform speaking about students, minority students, and she had a goal to get to the Obama White House, and she got her invitation eventually, but had some trouble with the funds to get there. And she gave me a call, and within an hour, I had turned it around to get her out to the White House, get her a place to stay, and no strings attached. Just get out there and do your thing, and that really created that tight connection that has lasted a lifetime.
Amazing. Amazing. Great to hear. Heather Faye from Workfront, what do you say?
Dina really hit the nail on the head, is that connecting to real life, and it's not just work related. And we had a customer when I was at Path Factory who was getting her MBA, and she mentioned, say in like the March timeframe, that her graduation was something like June 8th. And the person on the phone wrote it down. And on June 6th, we got together as a team and recorded a little video for her. Rah, rah, congratulations, you graduated. Didn't cost us a thing, right? We made a sign, we had some fun hats, maybe cost us $5 at the dollar store. And the day before her graduation, we sent this to her. And she was incredibly touched that it had been, she'd mentioned it a long time ago. She never mentioned it again, but it meant so much to her because it was such a big milestone in her life too. And it's just a good reminder that like the little listening thing is really what makes the difference when it comes to those kind of surprise and delight moments.
Yeah, I think, you bring up a really good point. We're often thinking about, how much can we spend? Can we send them, like, can we give them this massive, gift that they could take a picture of and, post it? But at the end of the day, it's about finding something that's super meaningful to them. And we're going to talk a little bit about tools and scalability when it comes to all this. I think what you said is interesting around, for both of you, Dina and Heather, what you just said, you made a note that this is something that was important to them. Someone wrote it down and somehow you managed to remember and do it. So, it sometimes you can't scale these things because they are intimate and they are about connecting and remembering. Truman, you are certainly a very creative one here.
Yeah. Thanks, Julia. High bar, fellow panelists. I'd have to say like the one that really stands out is like, nothing ultra glamorous. Is like one of our customers at the time really was, trying to figure out the career path, and it's being able to spend that time huddling with him and understanding like, okay, how can we make the case to, get you that promotion? So it took a few months, and we worked on, his program for a while, and it was a group collective effort, so I can't like take credit for myself. Like it was the CSM and everyone else. And when it got to showtime that he presented his case, with a PowerPoint presentation, rehearsed with like all of us folks, he nailed it and got that promotion. But the funny thing was, in order to celebrate that promotion, like a few of us kind of, did a little bit of LinkedIn, Twitter, I think, sleuthing, and we found out that his, I think at the time, his 4 or 5-year-old son was really into banjos. So, Julie, you said like, hey, we don't have to spend money. But in our case, we thought it'd be really, really great to help celebrate his promotion by buying his 4-year-old a banjo, so they can, in celebration, sing a tune for that person's promotion. So that stands out to me because as Dina and Heather, you mentioned, it's all about being, aligned with what their goals are and their interests. And I thought that kind of checked all the boxes. So yeah, I smile on that to this day.
Truman, I've been on the receiving end of your advocacy gift giving. And one that stands out for me from you was I had broken my wrist kickboxing. And lo and behold, in the mail
I
arrived
remember that.
an automatic can opener. And I was like, man, this is
I
cool.
remember that.
I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
actually open cans right now. How
Oh.
thoughtful.
Okay, all right.
This is a good one.
You're too kind, Dina. You're too kind.
Time out for 1 second, Truman. Now that you have your own child, are you rethinking the whole giving a child a banjo thing to a parent?
I mean, listen, I'm new to this parent thing. I think you just got to give them options and have them discover, right? So yes, I would do it over and over again. I think every parent needs to go through that phase, right? Right, parents?
I'm writing that down. Send.
Yeah, we'll revisit this conversation in like a couple months. Yeah.
Aaliyah, queen of gift giving.
Truman, I'm sending you a drum set.
Yeah.
Yes.
In a year. Okay.
Please make it all metal, a full metal drum
All
set.
metal drum set.
Okay,
Yeah.
promise.
You can't even put headphones on.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, so many amazing points already. Thinking about things that are part of your gift recipient's personal life, doing a little bit of digging. And Heather, you raised a really good point in that things don't have to cost a lot of money, but we have to implement it at the right time. So I have been, I love giving gifts, like my favorite thing. If I had unlimited money, everybody would be getting gifts all the time because I just love doing it. But recently, during COVID, things have been kind of stressful for a lot of people. So a client that I've been working with for a while, she's a mom going through, there was layoffs at her work. So at her company, struggling with working from home, with being a mom and working and suddenly taking on more responsibility. And we finished a meeting with a group, and then she and I were talking after, and she just like really broke down. And we'd had many conversations about wine and, like how, oh yeah, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. And so we'd have these conversations. And so I thought, forget this. I am sending her some wine. So I sent her some wine, had it delivered to her. I sent her a personalized wine tumbler, which some of you may have seen before, sent her one of those. And I think the piece that had the biggest impact for her was I wrote her a card, just a handwritten card. And I told her, I said, you're a great mom. You're a fantastic mom. And the fact that you even worry about these things shows what a great leader you are, right? Your team sees that. And she emailed me as soon as she got it. And she said, I cried, my daughter cried. You wrote my daughter's name in the card. I showed it to my parents. And so, things don't have to cost a lot, but they have to be done at the right time. Because if I'd send that months later, it wouldn't have had the same impact. And thinking about that connection that we made and we had a conversation about.
I think that personal touch is pretty incredible. One thing I think is really interesting is you see a lot of companies like that focus on gift giving during the prospecting stage. And there's been a lot more focus with account-based marketing to try and get new logos, new leads into your organization by sending a gift and sending as personalized as you can get. Every single one of your stories talked about sending a gift at a key moment during the customer life cycle. So once they've already purchased, once they're already a customer, now one would argue that you can get even more personal because you know them better, but also, do you think that there has been too much of a focus on generating, on marketing dollars, to get new leads versus, where we all spend most of our time, which is in the post-lead or post-sale business. And we all focused on, nurturing those customers and investing in those key moments that matter. Anyone want to jump in here with some perspective on that? Dina, I know, you recently just did some work around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like we're starting to see a bit of a shift, obviously, for the kind of the last 10, 15 years of customer advocacy. We focused on the customer and nurturing that relationship after the deal closes, or sometimes way after the deal closes, when that person has kind of bubbled to the surface instead of us actually deep sea fishing in our CRMs and looking for them. The shift that we're seeing now at Captivate with some of our customers is people wanting to focus on that pre-sale and starting to lay the foundation for advocacy should that deal close. So it's an investment, a financial and a time investment with no given that that deal is going to close and that that person can go on to become a customer advocate. But nonetheless, kind of planting those seeds along the way, whether that is through the act of the reference, demonstrating to the customer that, hey, this customer is being a reference, and maybe at some point, if you become a customer, you would be on the receiving the other side of that reference. Or another customer that we are working on at the moment, they have a free trial. So they have an app and they have a free trial. And we're trying to help them with the conversions to paid. So instead of just looking at, how are we going to get people on a demo call and how are we going to close the deal, we also have another stream of this project where we're looking at how can we identify a champion really early on before the sale closes? And then what can we do with that champion so that when that deal closes, they're primed and ready. There isn't kind of a waiting period for that person to become an advocate. As soon as they come through the front door, so to speak, they're on board with some sort of acts of advocacy ready to go.
That's so you're not necessarily having them do advocacy early on. You're just identifying that this is going to be your advocate and getting them sort of, as you said, primed and ready to go.
Right, exactly. Yeah, talking about advocacy, not using the word, of course, but talking about the types of things that maybe other customers are doing, introducing other customers into that sales cycle. You're already having advocates touching those potential advocates. I think the kind of next phase, and I know Mark Organ talked about this ages ago, that we really should have prospects intermingling with advocates in a much more programmatic way all throughout the sales cycle. And I think for kind of tried and true advocacy programs, we're going to see that happen more and more, where prospects are just a part of the conversation, kind of like at a party. Why wouldn't you want to be there and interested in something and someone comes over and starts talking to you about it and giving you their kind of live reference about whatever that is?
Can I tag on to that, which is something we tried at my last role, which was the idea of bringing in a reference much earlier in the process and proactively. And so we went to a select group of advocates who we knew always hit it out at the park and they're big fans, and said, would you be willing over the next 4 weeks to do 4 reference calls? It's a big ask. And in return, we gave them a nice thank you and sent them to a industry conference if they did this for us. So, but they agreed. And so very early in the sales process, as soon as someone was qualified and, this looked like it could be a promising thing, we said, one thing you should do, you should talk to one of our customers right now and get a feel for this. And by proactively doing that early, because we all do it toward the end, right? When it's like kind of a sure deal for the most part, it really helped move the needle and speed some things up, because that's really showing confidence in your solution and confidence by proactively doing that. It's hard to keep that going because you're really asking a lot of some people and you've got to think that through. But we did it for a quarter where we were really trying to make a push. And I would say 2 thumbs up on that idea if you have the ability to do it, even if it's just short term.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're usually so protective of our references.
Yeah.
And we don't want to give out, something that we do is actually we put testimonials and customer quotes and links to our G2 Crowd reviews in our proposals. Mm-hmm. And actually that stops us from needing a reference a lot of the time because that serves as a reference. But at the end of the day, sometimes people just want to be able to talk to them. And so, being able to know, I'm going to just ask these 10 people pretty much nonstop for a month, and then they're off limits, but at least you can do that.
Yeah.
Concept.
So yeah, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna tag in here too. Heather, Julia, Dina, as you all mentioned, I think now it's become more of where we used to market, business to business. We used to show off hey, here's our customer logo set and our NASCAR logo slides. I think we're just slowly developing more pockets of semi-influencer marketing type of things, and all of us kind of came from the same universe where it's how do we make the customer the champion? And I think that instead of a push method of always having the referenceable customer available to talk to the market, how do we make them a thought leader in themselves, right? So that they have inbound coming in, meaning we just step out of the way. And if they're known for FP&A or financial close, like they are the leader in that space. And by true virtue of the conversation, they know their stuff and they would recommend companies naturally in that conversation. I just remember like a company that does this so good is Marketo. Like during Marketo Summit, if you go down to Moscone, they have these huge banners, like the size of like a football field with like faces of their champions, right? And I remember seeing like, Tyler, CMO or the VP of marketing from Vidyard, and I'm like, hey, I know that guy. And to have their face there, like I could just imagine, and I'm starting to do that with like a lot of our other clients, is like having like your talent set per se, right? Like these are your actors. Like how do you put them on the best stage so that they get the gigs and the jobs and they advance their career while also advocating for your company?
Yeah, you've always been really good at building up your champions and your customers. Truman, I want to stay with you for a second. You and I had a really interesting conversation really about 8 months ago, although it probably felt like a week ago, where you've worked very closely with marketing your whole career. You've been in marketing teams, but focused on customer marketing. And you gave me some great thoughts around marketing's role to the customer. And I'm seeing, again, COVID really sped this up because companies weren't getting the new logos in. And so they're like, we got to focus on customers. And so even doing like account-based marketing to existing customers. So, what do you see as, if anyone heads up marketing is watching this right now, if you were to give them some advice of how to think about supporting your customer facing teams, and Heather, I want you to jump in on this because you're running a customer facing team. I'd love, your support here too. What would you say to them? What can they do to really drive that, cross-sell, upsell, retention piece from a marketing standpoint?
Yeah. I would say first and foremost, like I've always thought of like, and everybody that's watching, it's like, yeah, my background's a lot predominantly in customer marketing. But I've always been really into just like the whole funnel from a demand gen perspective. And I've always figured that customer marketers, like they should be in a leadership position, much like how demand gen does it, and to provide almost like air cover for their CS organization, right? Like CS folks, like they're really great at one-to-one building that relationship, like they're day in and day out with it. And I think it's marketing's responsibility to provide that air cover and be able to like kind of tie all departments together, product, CS, and sales, to tell like a singular story go-to-market. So I won't spend too much time on my soapbox, but like I've always really been fascinated on like the fact that like marketers' core goal is just to elicit attention, because if we can't gain any attention, whether it's new logo or customers, they will not spend the time to realize the value that our organizations can deliver. So like as marketers, not just customer marketers, like we need to be able to tell the right story to the right audience at the right time. And that's kind of like how I see marketing fitting in. Yes, they have a big budget, a bigger budget usually than CS. But how can marketing leverage those resources to help scale their CS counterparts? Like that's what I think our sole responsibility should be.
It's really good. I'll tie in on the data side. I think in marketing, there's so much emphasis on data, of building out lead scoring programs, on account-based marketing programs. Did this person do this? Do we put them on a different nurture track? Do we do that? And I think customer data and post-sale data is definitely the unloved child sometimes, right? And there's not enough attention given there. That's a terrible analogy. Sorry, I couldn't think of a better one. But
it's the truth. They're often overlooked, right?
It is.
The logo is meteor. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think especially right now, where there's a double down on, we got to save and keep our current customers more than anything. If we're not going to be bringing in as many new logos in this climate that we're in, we got to protect and grow those people. Then let's shift a whole bunch of those data resources onto the customer side, and thinking about more targeted customer communications. To Truman's point, air cover for the CSMs, right? Is there someone's coming up for a renewal in 1 year, and we know that that's usually the cliff between years 2 and 3 where someone might churn. We've seen that historically. Let's double down on that group of people, right? And so that's a data play. And I think if a marketer is listening, spend as much time and effort on customer data and post-sale data as you are on pre-sale data.
Yeah, well, we know, and even though we know this, and even though CFOs know this, it costs less to keep a dollar than it does to bring in a new dollar. There's still always more money spent on bringing in those new dollars, and I think we are starting to see that shift as companies are starting to look at their metrics and be like, hang on a second, we can actually achieve, way more profitability if we really focus on the customers we have already and, really make sure that we keep them and grow them. How do we scale this though? I mean, at the end of the day, we all know this is important. We do this. I mean, I've seen each of you run programs and it's like brute force. You're good at it. And the reason why you're in the places you are is because you've done so well at it and it just comes so naturally to you. And so how, not everyone's going to be like this. And so how, Heather, and with your team, right? How do you instill the little bit of what you have in your team? And Dina, with your clients, how do you infuse this into their process? And Aaliyah, as you think about your programs, like you can't just always do these one-off things. Like they're great stories. They're great. They achieve great impact. But at the end of the day, you're going to get the executive team and the board saying, okay, this is fine, but we want to get to 100 million by the end of next year. If this is going to drive this for our organization, we need to be able to do it at some level of systematic and scale.
That's a tough one.
It's a tough one. I know, we haven't figured it out, right? I mean, I think.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, some of it is personality, and I don't mean that in like a cult of personality way, but it's like some people are more led to these kind of jobs versus these kind of jobs versus these kind of jobs, right? So it's like there you have a natural affinity for things, and I think all of us have a natural affinity for people connections, which are generally one-on-one people connections. And so it is definitely it's easier to get sucked down that path and harder to think about how to replicate, because they work, like we just said at the beginning in our proud moments, because they're very personal. So it's hard to do something very personal on a giant scale. So potentially if you can lower the lift of what those personal things are and just look for tiny things instead of giant things, if it's just every day I'm going to do some little tiny act, then it becomes a little more part of your DNA for your team and the people that you're working with. Is just, what is that? At Workfront, we call it magic moments. What is that magic moment that you have created? I've called it delight before, because I like delight because it's a surprise element to it, right? It's like you weren't expecting this thing. That's why it's different. And so what is that little thing? If you just get people thinking that way, it can pervade a whole team. And then that's how you can start scaling a little bit, I think.
Okay, so you've scaled by culture in a way. You've basically
I'd say
part of the team, and it's like, okay, everyone's just you're not using tools, you're using it to say, hey, like this is gonna be part of our DNA here. We're gonna think about that magic moment or that delight moment, and we're gonna always be reminding you, like, what's that magic moment that you thought of today, until it just becomes part of, the way that you get up, you go get a coffee, you think of a magic moment. Like it's almost as natural as that.
I want to jump in on a couple of things. So Heather used this word of magic, and magic always reminds me of Disney, and Disney does some incredible things. And so one of the things that I've done from kind of infusing the personality or the culture of thinking about gifts or creating great experiences like Disney is to talk about like great customer experience principles, things like everything speaks, right? And what does that look like? And how do you model that or lead by example? So if you want people in your team to think about it in a certain way, do it for them so that they really feel that, right? So they know what that feels like. They're like, oh yeah, I know what that feels like. I want to give that to somebody else. So there's that sort of education and modeling piece to it. The other piece is, and this is something that I've been struggling with, is the scaling. Like, I think we have to think of, I don't have the answer for this, and hopefully people do, but if there is some kind of tool, maybe some technology that can help us keep track of things like those magic moments so that we're not depending on that one person who just wrote down the date, right? So how can we infuse that information in a place that we can access and get some triggers maybe, and try to scale certain things like those small micro moments that you mentioned. One thing that I did recently was I love doing surveys, and I asked people how they like their coffee. I think, Truman, this is something I got from you or inspired from you a few years ago. And because everyone's at
like,
home,
even if it is or it isn't, yeah. I think, yes.
Yeah, I ask people how they like their coffee. I get their addresses. Most people are like, how did they know where I live? Well, I asked you for your address, so you gave it to me. And when we're having a meeting, I will use Uber Eats, especially because we've got everyone at home, and I've had them deliver their coffee to arrive at the time of the meeting, and everyone has their specific coffee at the same time. We take a picture, and it's just a lovely moment, and no one is expecting to get Starbucks for this meeting at 8 in the morning.
Yeah, so Julie used that move on me in 2012, and it remains one of my most memorable experiences. Julie and Influitive had flown me out to Boston to speak at a user group, and this nice kind of like black SUV pulled up and whisked me away to the venue, and Julie was there with my preferred Starbucks, and I did not make the connection. I didn't know really how she did it, but it was just like this moment of, oh my gosh, like, wow, you're really, walking your talk here. And it also set me really at ease to go into this pressureful situation as a presenter in this user group. So the coffee one, I mean, it's so small, but it can be very impactful.
Yeah, actually, for all customer success teams, it's something, we're not really doing that today. It was like my go-to. If I were to go to a meeting, I'd always find out before, who was going to be in the room and how people like their coffee, because it's just a nice thing to walk in with. But the fact that we're not doing meetings anymore, it's still a nice thing, right? It's still, one of our trainers delivered pizza to their whole team, to the whole group that they were training separately to arrive at the same time. And it's like, everyone can order their own pizza, but when it's just sent to your door and you're all together, it creates another moment.
Mm-hmm. Just to build on this topic a little bit more about the scalability, thinking about more of a decentralized strategy or decentralized approach to advocacy. So getting advocacy off of Advocacy Island, or not just living with a really fantastic customer marketer, but decentralizing from that place out into the business. And don't ask me about tools because I don't know what the magic tool is, but I do know a CRM is a good place to start. You can track a lot of stuff on the contact record. But finding those folks inside the business across teams, and that could be someone in finance, it could be someone in HR, it could be someone in CS, all of the people, all of the departments that have some touch point with the customer, there's going to be people in those departments who have that X factor, who have that ability to really connect with people quickly and easily, who think like an advocate, who maybe are advocates themselves in some capacity in their own lives. And sort of having, I don't want to use the word committee, but having some sort of guiding light or guiding strategy for how these folks are going to engage and when. So it's not just, when the feeling is right, let's do something great, but trying to be a bit more strategic about it. Like, if this action happens or if this opportunity arises, then here are your plays in HR, or here are your plays for someone in finance, and empowering those people inside the business, whether it's with a bit of budget, to then go ahead and do their best in terms of nurturing those relationships. Essentially handing, we always have in the business world the problem of silos. In this decentralized approach, we're essentially giving the customers the keys across the business. And you're going to have a great experience here. You're going to move on. You're going to have a great experience there. And the journey isn't a straight line. So wherever that customer is in their journey, whatever their touch point is, we want them to have that fantastic and meaningful experience, so that it doesn't just feel like, oh, when I'm working with the customer marketing person or the advocate marketer, I'm having this amazing experience with the business, but my experience with this business is amazing no matter who I'm touching or who I'm interacting with.
Yeah,
I'm going to use advocacy island. Sorry, Truman, but that's like the best phrase ever. I'm writing it down. So.
Yeah, and mega snap to that, Dina. It's the, I recently got this like adage, or this three worded process. It's like people, process, and technology, where everyone here mentioned, like, we really do have to start with people. Like, who are the X factor people, or how do we elicit the right people to gain insight to the customer? Because let's be honest here, like, advocacy is a very uh, like personable matter. So how do you back that up? It's with other people. And then, as Dina mentioned, like, you need to instill a process so that everyone knows like the plan of action, and we're not going to be stiff about it. It's just a matter of like, how do we make it streamlined? And then you think about the tech, right? Which is, the CRM or whatever we decide to talk about next. But totally 1000% agree. It's the PPT.
Like it.
Yeah. Advocacy Island, PBT, Delight, Magic. We've got lots of terms being thrown out today. Let's talk a little bit about metrics, if that's okay, because at the end of the day, we've got to prove ourselves, right? We've got to prove that the budget's worth it. We've got to, and one thing I've heard a lot from recently, I've had a few conversations around NPS, and everyone seems to have a love-hate relationship, or a hate-hate, depending on where we're at. It seems to be this metric that has come, from, a concept that was derived out of a B2C world and has really infiltrated into the SaaS B2B world, wrongly used most of the time, but it's like a score that companies and boards can hold on to. But there's better. We can do better. And I think when you look at advocacy, that's really putting the money where the mouth is, right? It's saying, would you refer, or here's my 20 referrals that I got, right? It's like actually saying we drove leads. Referrals is something, we all know is valuable to organizations. What other metrics are you using, or do you recommend clients use? Like, what are some good KPIs or metrics that we want to look at?
I'll give a shout out to Lauren Triance Haldane, who worked with me at Path Factory, because she built one of the most amazing dashboards to measure these things that I had ever seen. And it was really about attributing revenue. So you're not taking credit for the revenue, but you have an influence, right? So it's influence revenue. And anytime a reference call happened, that name was connected to the opportunity. So there's a pretty clear influenced revenue. This deal closed, we had a reference. But she took it one step further. And if there was a customer speaker, say we were going to the Serious Decisions conference and there was a speaker there, the people who were in that room who attended that session and then went on to purchase, that was influenced revenue. If they watched a case study on our website, a video that was customer X, then that influenced revenue. And so she not only said the advocacy program has influenced this much revenue, she also then ranked advocates by how much revenue they had influenced. And there was one guy who had influenced over $1 million in revenue. And so we did a special video for him and a little shout out and a thank you, and just, really gave him some kudos for that and did some fun stuff. But tying to revenue is going to win all day, every day. And that it takes a fair bit of effort. She worked with the marketing team on a bunch of stuff. She was using Full Circle Insights, if we're talking about tools, and that seemed to work pretty well for her. But it was really taking it one step further. And I was always impressed with that.
Yeah, 100% on board with you there. That is the number one most important metric, is that influence on revenue. And some organizations are going to be a little bit shy of that influence, but it's a number that we just have to push and say, this is real. This isn't a back of the napkin calculation. This is real influence. These people, these case studies, these speakers, these references, these referrals, they actually have an impact on the bottom line. And if I can give a shout out to Robin Hamilton, just last week on LinkedIn, he shared, I think it was 4 or 5 page document, a dashboard document, really heavily focused on influence on revenue, and it's downloadable. It's fantastic. So if anyone is looking for a great document to get started with, just look up Robin on LinkedIn and find that document. I thought it was fabulous, and what a great asset to share.
Yeah, and but I'll throw my 3 cents in there. Yeah, totally agree. Sounded like a broken record. And even before that is just like, you know, because everything kind of relates down to acts of advocacy, but also in terms of like, I don't know, like engagement amongst whatever product you're selling or services that they're consuming. Because I think if this is the CS talks, like, yes, showing that your customer in your portfolio has impacted net new revenue, but also like, what about existing revenue, right? Like, are advocates more likely to renew or expand and like grow their current account? And sure, some things don't work out, right? Some weird stuff happens within organizations and thus churn happens. But afterwards, like we can, you leverage that same customer to understand like how else have they, affected net new or existing deals, whether they pan out or not. So I would say also, yeah, engagement, the whole expansion, retention, and
Right.
at bare minimum, acts of advocacy.
Yeah, there's an area that often doesn't get talked about, which is, we're all representing or working with product companies, and product companies release new products all the time. Dina, you were actually one of when you were still a client, you beta tested our events product at Influitive. And I remember we were going to roll it into the just sort of the general platform. And we said, hang on a second, do we think that we could actually make it a standalone product? And I remember sitting in my car, actually, I think I was waiting to go into like a doctor's appointment, and I was chatting with you about, would you buy this? Would you buy an events feature? How many events would you use this for? How much would you be willing to pay for it? And no joke, 2 weeks later, we launched it as a new product and used it to upsell our customers. And so when we think about net new revenue, it can also be net new revenue to our existing customers. And then you were a story and a case study and a testimonial for this product that we sold not just to existing customers, but also to new customers. And so that's another way to think about that dashboard of influence revenue. It's like, we weren't going to get any money from this product. We were just going to, make it part of the regular feature.
Right.
Superb.
This has been a great chat. We've already gone over our usual, 30 minutes, but I knew this was going to go over, so I saved more time in our calendars. But it was so great to see all of you. You're all doing such incredible work in your spaces. It's an honor to actually, be able to call you all friends and know that if I ask, hey, you want to get on a quick chat, you'll just jump on and do it. And we'll all learn a little bit from each other. So I know we're over. Normally I do a little last words, but I think I'll just end it with thank you so much. It was great chatting with you. And if anyone watching this has any other questions, I'll tag you all on LinkedIn, and please reach out, because this is a true source of wisdom in this space, everyone here.
Thanks, Julie.
Oh,
Thanks,
great.
everybody.
Yeah, thanks for hosting.
Julie. See ya. Thanks.
All right. Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.